Okay, so the idea is to give you a guide for how to do your pelvic floor exercises. Just before we do that, we'll go through a brief overview of what the pelvic floor is and how it functions. So the pelvic floor muscles are there to support the urethra, which is opening from the bladder, which is the front of the pelvic floor. And then in the middle, you've got the vagina. And then at the back, you've got the anus, opening from the bowels, which is at the back of the pelvic floor. And it runs from the sit bones at the front all the way to the coccyx at the back. And then side to side. So your pelvic floor muscles are going side to side and front to back. And they're really important. During pregnancy, they take so much strain, and it's the process of the 9 months of pregnancy and carrying the weight of the baby that can lead to pelvic floor dysfunction. So even if you've delivered via cesarean section and you've not had a vaginal birth, it's still really important to do your pelvic floor exercises in the postnatal period. And obviously throughout pregnancy, we should be doing your pelvic floor exercises as well. The issue is that lots of the time people are really confused about what the pelvic floor exercises are and how to do them. So I'm hoping that I can simplify that for you a little bit today in this video. When we think about the pelvic floor muscles, they're like any other muscle. They move through an entire range of movement. So they contract by lifting and squeezing, and then they relax by lengthening and relaxing. So when you think about your bicep, you take it all the way up into full range flexion, and then you take it back out into extension. And our pelvic floor muscles should do the same thing. I think when people think about pelvic floor exercises, the emphasis is on squeeze, 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 and there's not enough emphasis given to the fact that we then need to relax the pelvic floor as well, and it's a full exercise through a full range of movement. So when we do them, we want the easiest cue, and there's millions of cues out there, but the one that the research has found to be the easiest one to understand, because everyone has been there in a social situation, is trying to imagine yourself passing wind somewhere you really don't want to pass wind. You're on a first date, or you're standing up in front of a crowd of people, you're in a yoga class, and you really want to hold that wind in. And that's been found to be the most effective cue as to how to activate and find your pelvic floor muscles. If you squeeze the back passage, then the front will lift as well. So the pelvic floor will move as a whole. So if you can get the back passage, which is where the stronger portion of the muscles are, to lift and squeeze, the front of the pelvic floor will also lift and squeeze with it. There's lots of other cues out there: elevators rising, sucking up a milkshake using the vagina, lifting up a blueberry. You have to find the cue that works for you. It is a little bit of trial and error, but most people find the idea of stopping themselves from passing wind is one that helps them to find their pelvic floor muscles. Once you've managed to find your pelvic floor muscles, you then want to work on 2 different types of exercises, because in our pelvic floor we've got fast twitch fibers and we've got slow twitch fibers. So the fast twitch fibers, there's less of them, 30%, and they're the ones that help us to stop having a leak, so stress incontinence, when we cough, laugh, sneeze, or if we stumble. So they need to react nice and quickly and stop any leakage from occurring. The slow twitch fibers are the endurance fibers, and they work if, for example, we're on a car ride and the nearest petrol station is going to be 10-15 minutes away, and you've got to hold your bladder until you get to that petrol station. So you've got to have that endurance in your pelvic floor as well. So we're going to do 2 different types of pelvic floor exercises. You can try it in lots of different positions, and this is another way to help you find the pelvic floor muscles. If you find that you can't feel them very well in lying, try sitting. We'll do another video on this as well. Try standing, try child's pose. Try different positions until you find which one works for you to feel them best. Once you've got them, start with your slow contraction. So for your slow contraction, what you want to do is lift the pelvic floor and then build up to holds of 10 seconds. If you can only manage a good hold for 5, do 5. So lift and hold for 5, and then completely let go and relax. If you can then gradually build it to 7, that's great, then build to 10. There's no point in trying to hold for 10 if you're holding your breath or not really keeping that contraction on. Start with less and build it up to more. Once you've done those, you want to do your fast twitch. So for your fast twitch, you're literally switching the pelvic floor on and then letting it go. And with those, you want to think about lifting on quickly, but then still completely relaxing the pelvic floor between each lift. So lift it up and on, and then let it go. But make sure it's fully switched off before you lift again. Don't just squeeze, 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 or you can end up not lengthening the pelvic floor back down to its resting length. So that's your fast one. So you want to do 10 of your slow and 10 of your fast, at least 3 sets a day. If at any point you do your pelvic floor exercises and you feel pain, or you feel like it's less comfortable for you to be doing them, stop and seek some advice, seek an assessment from a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Don't just keep doing them. If you feel like your leakage is getting worse with doing your pelvic floor exercises, or you're having increased pain in the pelvic floor, pain on intercourse, or just pain when you're doing them, stop and ask someone to do an individualised pelvic floor assessment for you. If you're doing them and you feel absolutely fine, continue doing them, as I said, your 3 sets a day. Another thing that you can use to help you with your pelvic floor exercises is the breath. So what we're going to do is do a separate video now on using the breath to help you to find and engage your pelvic floor.